What's up? It's Doug Cunnington here, and in this interview, I talked to Evan. Evan is another success story, and this is an update. So if you didn't check out the first interview with Evan, I'll put a link in the description so you could have a look there. This is really cool because at least when I talked to him, he was on target to hit $8,000 for the first time in his niche site journey, which is really cool. So he's making revenue from multiple sources. So I think he has, a chunk from Amazon. He has some ads potentially and maybe some affiliate offers. So he has a multiple sort of tiers of monetization. But congratulations, Evan. You're hitting like a pretty high milestone. We get into the weeds quite a bit. So we talk a little bit about Pinterest, but the really deep part that a lot of people don't mention is the business side. So we talk about forming a company, an LLC or corporation or whatever. We also talk about S Corp, filing taxes, and please consult your accountant and attorney and people that know what they're talking about, because Evan and I go back and forth and we talk about what we did, but it's clear that we are uninformed, that we don't know what we're talking about. But if you are starting to make some money, then you probably want to listen to this to get an idea of what you need to get into. So without further ado, let's go to the interview. Thanks a lot, Evan. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. All right, what's up, everybody? I'm sitting with my friend Evan. How are you doing today?
Hey, Doug. I'm good. I'm glad to be back.
And if this is the first time that you've seen Evan on here, you should watch the first video. So this is an update, and you and I talked, I think it was about 6 months ago, something like that, in the summer of 2018, and you were doing pretty well. If I remember, you were making like $4,000 on your site, which was, I think, like a year and a half old, and you were using the keyword golden ratio and it was working out pretty well, right?
Yeah, exactly. I guess it was right about 6 months ago we talked, and I was just kind of on the verge of hitting that 4K a month mark.
So what happened? We're recording this now in like January of 2019. So where are we at now as far as revenue, traffic, stuff like that?
Yeah. So the good news is that right now in January, I'm on track to have my best month ever by far. I'm on pace for something like 8K this month, which is really, really exciting. But there's definitely been some ups and downs on the way here, which is wild. When we talked, I was making, I think 3,800 is where I came in that month that we chatted. And before then, I had seen like these crazy incremental jumps like every month. It was like I went from making a couple $100 to making 4,000 in, 6 months, and then hit some seasonality in the niche. Things kind of slowed down, traffic kind of plateaued, and it was all very discouraging for a while through the fall and the winter. And it's really exciting to see things kind of headed back up right now, finally starting off 2019.
Cool. Congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. And I assume when you got started, like you didn't have any idea that you'd be able to make that much just in a month or so.
No, not at all. I mean, I think I mentioned in our original conversation, but my plan was to kind of work on this on the side. And while I looked for a job and, whatever happened, I get a little side income, but, it just went better than I expected. And then, I wouldn't have believed that I would end up, at the kind of level that I'm at.
Cool. Well, like I said, congratulations. Let's back up and hear about you. So where you're from, what was your day job? Like, I know you're doing this full time now, but yeah, just give us a little background.
Yeah. So I live in Atlanta, which I know you're familiar with. I've been here for about 6 or 7 years. And my background is really in writing. So I've always been interested in writing, did it for fun. Kind of coming out of college, I started doing some freelance writing here and there. Eventually, I ended up with a digital marketing agency in Atlanta and doing some copywriting and kind of learned content strategy and all that kind of stuff. And that was a really good background for what I'm doing now, obviously. From the agency, then I went on to write for like a really big news viral type publisher, kind of like a BuzzFeed. And that was also a really good experience too. More writing for the web, learning how to make stuff, clickable, well packaged for social media, for search, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, my background is really, really well suited to this, I think. And, like we talked about, it was almost a year ago. It was last February that I ended up quitting that job to work on this. And well, I thought I would get another job, but things didn't go that way. So
Gotcha. And how many years were you in the content field with a corporate job?
Yeah, probably a good 5 or 6 years, with a few extra years of side writing and freelance writing on top of that. So, at the digital agency that I worked, I was there for 4 or 5 years, and then with the big publisher for about 2 or 3. So,
okay. How important do you feel like that background was to help you write like good content?
It was really, really good. I mean, just getting that practice of writing a lot and writing in different styles and writing about things that I didn't know about necessarily. I had to hone a lot of good research skills and good, information gathering skills and learning the basics of how to format, how to go into WordPress, how to go into other content management systems, how to use headers and bullets and, things that I take for granted now because I've been doing them forever. But I know that when a lot of people get started, they're like, oh my God, I'm in WordPress. What do I do? So at least just having that leg up and just knowing basically how to write for the web was a huge leg up for me.
Cool. And I mean, you would expect that would be really valuable since that is one of the main components. So at this point, are you still doing all the writing and that sort of thing?
Yeah, for my own side, I write almost everything. I've gone through phases where I've hired pieces of it out, but sometimes as a writer, I can be a little precious about the content. And I've revisited the thought a couple times of like outsourcing more of it. And I think at some point I may need to remove myself as the bottleneck to get more done. But I like doing the writing for the most part. And so I'm happy to keep working on it.
And I think at this point, like since so much of the site is in your voice, it's probably, easier and you have the control over it and all that stuff. But you're right. Like at some point, you want to get away from the laptop, the keyboard for a bit and just kind of chill out. So
for sure. Yeah. Well, and then I have a list of ideas that's a mile long, way more than I have time to ever write. So, I mean, I've got probably 15 or 20 things that I would love to get on the site tomorrow, but that's one of the drawbacks of being one person and working by yourself.
Now, do you have like several sites or you're just working on one?
So yeah, in the last summer, I started a second one and I just have been chipping away on it ever since. And it's growing really, really nicely. I've got about 50 articles on there. Traffic is really, really growing fast and doing well.
Can you give us an idea of the traffic for that site that's like 6-7 months old or so?
Yeah, it's about 7 months. It might do about 20,000 page views this month. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with the way it's grown.
And for the first site, how much content do you have there?
I've got about 150 articles on there.
Okay. And I keep up. I try and check on, shoot you an email. So I check with the success story folks just to see like what's going on. So if I remember right, you were, adding a lot of content and doing some things. So can you tell us about your plan on what you were going to do, what you actually did, and like how the results are right now?
Yeah, for sure. So, what I've learned is that both for me and I think for this business, like it's very process driven. So my goals in a week or a month or a quarter is to do like X amount of production. And so like usually most weeks I'm like, all right, I want to get, 3 new articles up, 5 new articles up, whatever it is. That's like 90% of what I spend my time on because it's, that's what moves the business forward ultimately. So pretty much I've just rolled with the same process we talked about. I mean, I use the KGR sometimes, but my site's almost 2 years old now and is a little bit more powerful, and I feel comfortable competing for more competitive things at this point. So in some ways I've graduated a little bit from it, but I definitely use it as a gut check a lot of the time, especially when I'm going for those lower competition things. So yeah, I mean, I've just been adding a ton of content. I think probably since the time we talked, I've about doubled the content that I had, and everything kind of came to a head in August. That's when I made about 5K on the site. I had almost 100,000 page views on the site. I was just like over the moon about it because up to that point, I was still seeing this crazy month to month growth. And then that's when the kind of the seasonality hit of the niche, which was, not devastating, but it caused everything to kind of like go down 20% or so and just plateau for a couple months, despite the fact that I had added all this new content and I had, been working my ass off. So that was a little bit discouraging to see that, like, all that work I did up through August, and then in September, October, November, I was like, why won't traffic go up? Why am I not earning any more money? So that was kind of a tough stretch, even knowing that it was seasonal, but not really knowing for sure, right? Like you want to see it get to that next level before you really believe that it's going to happen. So, and then I was all excited for December being the buying season, and December was definitely better, but it wasn't. Like my niche is a January thing for sure. So I didn't see the big boost that I wanted until I'm seeing it right now. So
that makes total sense.
Yeah, that's the basic story. I'm just adding a ton of content and I'm splitting time between the sites. But I mean, I think this year I've written something like 200 pieces of content, or most of those are written myself. So it's been a grind. It's been a grind for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a lot of content, man. Did you do any link building, or have you done link building in the past?
I did very early on in my site. I did like an infographic campaign, right? I went to Upwork, made an infographic that turned out pretty cool, promoted that around. I got a few links out of that. But other than that, I've just been really focused on ranking without the links, going for stuff I really feel strongly that I can compete for based on the content. And this past, speaking of kind of being burnt out on writing, this past month or so, I've really been working on Pinterest, which has been an awesome experience. And I've learned a lot doing that.
Very cool. Well, I was going to say one of the other success stories, Graham, he just pinged me the other day asking about Pinterest. So what can you tell us? What have you learned on the Pinterest side?
Yeah, I think I got to a point where A, I needed a break from writing. B, in certain niches, you're definitely doing yourself a disservice if you're not at least exploring Pinterest, parenting, fitness, DIY, fashion, recipes, like anything like that, like you got to be on there. I was just totally confused. I had no idea how Pinterest worked at all. I don't really use it in my normal life. So I was really starting from scratch. I considered just hiring somebody to do it for me, but I was like, you know what? I want to stop. I want to break anyway. Let me just dive in and see what I can do. And so the thing that I've learned about Pinterest is that it's so much more like Google than I thought, right? Obviously it's a search engine, which makes it more valuable, I think, than a Facebook or a Twitter, because it has, your content has more of a shelf life and it can get in front of people who are looking for specific things. So, your product related articles can actually do well on Pinterest, which is really cool. But then the other thing with Pinterest is that there's a bit of a sandbox period, just like Google, where you got to be on there and you got to be active and you got to be a good member of the community for a long period of time before they start to trust you to serve your content to people. So that's the biggest thing is I'm just trying to be on there and pin stuff every day and watch my reach just go up and up and up.
Right. Now, have you seen a lot of traffic coming then at that point? Or
yeah, the growth has been really, really good. On the main site, I'm getting anywhere from 25 to 100 new visitors a day through Pinterest, like actually coming to my site. And so I think that's a pretty good start, considering I started at almost zero. On the second site, which I think is even better suited to Pinterest, I'm getting like a couple hundred people a day from Pinterest. So definitely seeing really good returns early on.
Awesome. And do you see a correlation between the pages or posts that are getting traffic and the rankings from Pinterest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm very interested to see that play out myself because I'm new to it. Like I've only been actively using Pinterest for a month or so. So I think it's a little early to tell now, but I definitely think that there's going to be a correlation when you're not getting do follow links from Pinterest, but Google still sees them and they see that you're getting traffic and engagement and people are sharing your stuff. So I would think over time, like, I'll see a bit of a bump on pieces that are doing well.
I don't have very much experience with Pinterest. I've had a couple things go viral by accident and
sure,
there was a correlation, but there was also like other things going on, like link building and other just activities to get eyes on that piece of content. So it's like you can never quite tell like what is helping with the rankings, but
sure. Yeah. It's really hard to isolate things like that. Yeah.
But yeah, like going viral on any platform is going to be a good thing.
You talk a lot about high touch types of processes and things that are going to be hard for people to duplicate. And I think you'll find that like sometimes you may have a post that's not ranking where you want it to on Google, or maybe it's just not ranking yet because it's too new or whatever, but it can still do very well on Pinterest because your competitors aren't there, right? So it's like you have multiple channels for getting traffic and engagement and stuff, which is really cool.
Gotcha. And do you have any guides or resources to recommend around Pinterest, like where you sort of got your game plan?
Yeah. Oh my God, there's so much out there. And I was totally overwhelmed at first. And everyone wants to sell you a course and everything. I've been listening to a podcast from a company called Simple Pin Media. I recommend going back through their archives and there's a lot of good stuff in there about, especially if you have no idea and you're just kind of starting out with it like me.
As far as like conversions, can you get any, or do you have any insight on like if those people are coming from Pinterest, if they're buying anything or not?
Yeah, it's probably a little early to tell for me just because it's only been a month or so, but I'm definitely curious about that. And, I think I mentioned one of the really cool things is that if you have like the best pens for left-handed people, like that would never get traffic on Facebook or Twitter because it's so specific. But, people might go to Pinterest and actually search for that or like something close to it. And so, in terms of buying intent, I think you can definitely get matches there. But in terms of conversions, I don't have good data on that quite yet. So we'll see.
And I'm sure they talk about this in the podcast that you just mentioned, but like, I imagine you have to have like the correct like dimensions for a pinnable image. And then after that, you pin it and then you're good to go, right? Is that?
Yeah. So one of the big things is that I don't want this to become a major time suck where I'm always just working on this constantly. So, I'm starting to get set up with Tailwind, which is a scheduling app. So you take 10 extra minutes after you write a post, make a good image for it, maybe take an hour on Monday and get your whole week of pins scheduled, and then you could be done. That's kind of the workflow that I'm shooting for.
There's so many areas where it's like a treadmill of content, which is why you won't find me on Twitter or Facebook very much, or YouTube turned out to be a treadmill of content where I'm like, what is going on? Like, I just all I can do is pump out more videos, and I'm like, this is not paying off very well. I know hopefully people like them, you're watching this right now, but at some point I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I'm just doing the same videos over and over again. Somehow I ended up talking about myself when we're talking about Pinterest, and I don't even like Pinterest. That's funny. So anyway, it's one of those things that can get out of hand because one has to be active on it. You can't just show up, set it up, and then go do something else. So if you dropped off, you would potentially lose that trust in the Pinterest algorithm and stuff that was going on in a positive way. So
yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Sure.
All right. So we were chatting beforehand, and you mentioned forming a company and kind of getting your business in order. People ask me about this often, and usually it's before they've even started their site. And I was like, settle down there. You're putting the cart before the horse here. Yeah. Just once you make some money, you'll figure out how to solve that problem in the future. So where are you at right now? I mean, you're making good money. You're making full-time money. So what's going on?
Yeah, so this has been a process for sure. Yeah, I don't think you need to worry about it when you're not making any money or making a couple $100 a month. That's pretty simple to deal with. But when you start getting into that point where you're making several $1,000s a month, it becomes time to think about going forward. How are you going to organize the structure of your business? Because it is a business at that point, and it has value, right? It's an asset. It brings you income. So, I think you got to meet with an accountant and follow their advice. Mine told me to, set up an LLC, do the S Corp election, which means you're going to get taxed like a company, and then, to actually go on with a payroll company so that I'm getting paychecks from my company. And then through that, you're able to shield some of your income from getting that double self-employment tax. And so there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of forms to send the government, and a lot of kind of admin stuff that goes on there. But, when you get to that point where you're making $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month, it's important.
Yes, that's exactly what I did, basically. A couple of little things are different, with the laws across states or whatever. But yeah, essentially, you nailed it. But talk to your accountant. And one thing I did from the very beginning, I just happened to have a separate checking account and a separate credit card account, at the beginning. So I put everything on those. Now, I was sort of using it for some personal stuff, in the first year or so. But then I stopped using it, and then, got other credit cards. They're so easy to get. They'll just send you credit cards. So you can if you have it separate, it's very easy to pull the CSVs, and basically everything's separate. When it becomes an issue or a way that you may find yourself confused is if you have your family's full financial structure or whatever, and you have the checking account and you have the credit card and everything's jumbled in, then you have to look through every single transaction. If you silo it off, then it's simple. You just pull that report and you're good to go.
For sure. And that's something that I just got set up. I just went into the bank the other day and opened up separate business accounts, because it gets really messy when your income is coming into the family account, and then the payroll stuff, which I'm still setting up, you've got to take out your own tax money. So money comes in, then you got to take the taxes out, set them aside. And it's just very, very messy. And so, the more separate you can have those things, the better. And my accountant even said, you'll make better business decisions when it's all separate and you can see it separately and you start thinking of it like a business and not just your side income.
100%. Yeah. It's funny now that you're mentioning it, I forget, because I've done this for a little while, but I was saving a ton, right? Because I knew I'd eventually have to pay taxes. So I was always saving 40%. Because I wasn't quite sure. So I was always saving 40%. Once you hit a certain level, you're probably at the point where you're going to need to start paying quarterly, because the IRS will penalize you. This is for US folks. I'm sure it translates to other places too. But they'll start to penalize you for not paying in advance when you should have known that you were making so much. It is hard to predict, right? Because your income is jumping, and next year, it'll be a little more confusing and you could make some assumptions and, see how well your guesses are. But yeah, quarterly. And then I'm trying to think if there's other stuff. Every now and then I'll get a comment where someone's like, I can't believe you're paying so much in taxes. And, I can't either, right? Because usually I throw out like 40 to 50%, but like, I don't know, maybe I'm not taking advantage of all the loopholes or something like that. But people think you could like write off all this stuff, but like you can write off things that you are buying like as an expense, but the money is gone, right? Like I don't have to, like it's gone now. So I've spent the money. So, and that's not exactly what I'm trying to do. So if I like had very little profit, then right, I don't have to pay much taxes, but yeah. So what are you finding? Like, you did the LLC, the S Corp, so you don't have to pay the double amount on its Social Security. We're getting deep in the weeds, but I think people will care about this.
Yeah, so no one ever talks about this stuff, so it's good. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So it's unemployment tax, and then Social Security. And there may be like one other thing in there, but usually it's about 15%, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have to pay income tax, obviously, on what you make. And then that's the part that sucks is you're getting double dipped on those extra taxes that, you wouldn't have to pay the employer's portion if you worked for a company. So yeah, basically the way I understand it is with the S Corp. And if you structure the payouts properly, like you can take about half of your income and protect it from that extra 15% tax or something like that. And so, and the other cool thing about going on with a payroll company is what I'm trying to set up now is that they will just handle a lot of that. Like they'll just take the taxes out of your check like you would normally if you worked for a normal company. You never see it. You never have to worry about it.
Gotcha.
That sounds good to me.
And it gets a little confusing because I'm sure people are like, well, my company pays for this Social Security, and that's exactly it. So your company that you would work for, they would pay the unemployment tax, the Social Security. But if you have no company, you are the company, then you have to pay your half and you have to pay the company's half.
Right.
So if you're unsure what I'm talking about, go like to your pay stub or your last pay stub and have a look at it, and you'll see like you paid some Social Security and some other stuff, and then your employer also paid part of that too, or they paid in addition. And I'm sure some accountant is probably yelling at us right now, like, you guys, you don't know what you're talking about. So go talk to a professional, because Evan and I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I would urge people, even if you're just starting out and you're just making a little bit a month, like just be mindful of it, because you don't want a surprise at tax time. If you made an extra $2,000 last year and you didn't save any of it, like you're not going to be happy. So just be aware of it.
Yep. And it's about like 1/3 is a good estimate, because you'll have to pay, your state, most likely, if you have income tax in your state, and then, the IRS. So now we didn't talk much about like your why. So you mentioned you quit your job, or you left your job in February of 2018, and you were just going to do this on the side. So obviously things are working out well, but can you tell us like just a little bit about your why and like you're sticking with it and all that stuff?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a big part of it. I don't know. Like I felt like for years I had this sort of growing discontent and even like contempt for modern workplaces. Like, and I had a lot of trouble putting it into words, but I'm like, why do I like hate this so much? Why do I hate like corporate culture? And why do I hate, all these stupid things you're expected to do? And like, why does it not resonate with my soul? Like, why do I just feel like this is wrong? I knew that was kind of growing and building in me, but it was when I read the 4-Hour Workweek actually that it all kind of hit me, and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I've been feeling, and I just couldn't put it into words. It's not that I don't like to work hard. It's not that I don't like to tackle projects or make money. It's just that the modern workplace just doesn't sit with me. The fact that you not only are you there for so many hours a week, but I think in today's world, like so much of you is invested in your job. Like your social media profiles are your brand, and you have to go to extra professional development things, and you have to be a part of the company culture and buy in on all these things that may not have anything to do with your work. They're kind of like siphoning off a portion of your soul and your personality. And, it's a lot to ask, right? Like, did I want that long term? And I really didn't. That's kind of my why. I felt like I would be happier working for myself and just betting on me to do the hard work. And if it fails, then it's on me. And if it succeeds, then I reap all the benefits of it. And, and it's great to be able to do extra things for my family. Like I can stop working at any time in the day and like go to the grocery store, clean up, run an errand, pick my daughter up from school, like whatever needs to be done. Like I'm very, very flexible. And so that's like a really cool thing to have.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact line in the 4-Hour Work Week, but it was something like a comfortable life of like discontent or something like that. And I was like, yeah, that's the worst when you have a pretty good job, but it's like unfulfilling. You're generally like not too happy about having to go in. If you're in Atlanta or another big city with traffic, like getting to the office, even if you're close by, can be stressful, in general. So I totally understand. When did you read the 4-Hour Work Week?
It was last year, early last year at some point I read it. I'm not sure exactly why. I think because I had heard about it. Everyone's heard the title floating around, and I was just like, yeah, let me give this a shot. And it just resonated with me really, really deeply.
Nice. So you said you read it early last year and then you quit in February. So you pretty much read it. And then
I think I actually quit before. And then because of all those things I mentioned, I was like, I was ready to move on from that job, but I didn't know that I was ready to move on from all jobs. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Right. Now, your revenue has grown quite a bit since we talked last, and just curious on like goal setting. Like, did you have like a specific amount in your mind? How were you approaching this? And what are your goals, say, for this year or the next few months?
I think that the name of your course kind of always sticks out to me, like 5-figure niche site. Like in terms of a high level goal, like making 5 figures a month relatively passively would be amazing, right? Like it's going to take work to upkeep it and to build it and all that and to grow from there. But I feel like that would be a really, really good level to get to. But I think for me, like, I think I mentioned this, I'm a process oriented person. Like I'm a production oriented person. So most of my goals are about the work that I want to get done. And I was listening to an interview with the guy who founded Basecamp, which is like, you probably know Basecamp. It's like a file sharing messaging platform for like project management. And he was saying that in their company, they don't even do like financial goals. They have project goals, and they're like, we're going to do cool shit and good things will happen, And I found that to be the case already. Like I can't predict, I thought I was going to make so much more money in December, and like it didn't happen. And now I'm seeing the results of it. So I just feel like if I keep pushing and if I doubled my content, I could probably roughly double my income, but I don't know exactly. Like if I gave you a number, I'd be pulling it out of my ass. So
yeah, right. I think I heard the same interview or a similar one. So it's Basecamp. We could get some links to it too, but it's Jason Fried and David DHH. I forget his last name.
Yeah, I can't remember.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because there's a couple of people that have mentioned it. So those guys, and then Scott Adams, who is the Dilbert cartoonist and author and stuff like that. And he mentions that in one of his books. So use systems, right? So use systems because you can keep working at it. If you set a goal, it's binary. You hit it or you did not. So if you were aiming for name any amount for December of last year and you missed it, you were like, I failed my goal. Like that's it. You worked all year long, you failed it, and it sucked. Or you could say, hey, I'm going to be putting so much content, high quality. You have certain metrics, and like you find joy, luckily, in like executing the project, doing the system, and all that. I'm exactly the same way. When I did some of the case studies that I share, usually it was just like, here's the thing we're going to do. And we can make some assumptions about what'll happen. You should always look and make some guesses, but like the goal was to execute the project, not necessarily to get the, exact return or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you have to enjoy the work to some degree. I mean, I think that like too many people in this industry are looking for shortcuts. They want someone to give them all the keywords, write all the content for them, maybe buy a done for you site. And it's like, I don't know, man, I don't know if that's going to work out. Like you gotta get something out of waking up and actually doing the work every day. I mean, I have posts that I wrote 6 months ago that are still seeing incremental gains in traffic every month. Like it takes a long time, if you're doing things the right way. So, you better buckle in and just, get to work and keep your head down, keep moving. And like, not to say you shouldn't adjust and look at your strategy and see if it's working, but if it's working, just do what you got to do to keep doing more of it. And the results will come.
Exactly. If I remember right, you started your site, like the first site, the one that's making the majority of the money. You started your site and worked on it for something like 8 months or something before you started using the KGR. So it's been a little while since you were in those early stages. But do you have any advice for people that maybe haven't quite got started yet?
I mean, my advice would be to start as soon as possible and just stop screwing around with themes and plugins and logos and like just get in there. I mean, no one's going to see your content for a couple months anyway, and you're going to need a lot of it. So the sooner you can get going is, the better off you're going to be. I just wish I had started earlier too, right? I wish I had the site, like you said, for, 6 to 8 months or something like that before I really buckled down and got serious about producing content that was actually going to make me money. So I could be a lot farther along if I had just started earlier, but it's part of the journey.
Right. I mean, the first 6 to 8 months are really tough. So how did you stick with it? Like, what kept you motivated? And this was before you quit your job and all that stuff. So,
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned in our first interview that I just started it as a hobby because I like writing and I like, keyword research and content and stuff. And so I had some vague idea that maybe I would do something with the site at some point, but I wrote articles that were interesting to me within the niche because it's a niche that I'm personally involved in and I know a little bit about, so that helps. I wasn't too worried about the growth. I would just write stuff and, suddenly after a couple of months, I saw it starting to grow and grow. And then I was like, okay, how can I actually make this profitable at this point? Cause it is getting traction. I am seeing traffic, and that's kind of when I came on the KGR. The KGR was great for me because it just gave me a blueprint for okay, I can follow this and I can write a ton of content. You know what I mean? It wasn't, it allowed me to see the bigger picture of how I can do this over and over and over again and get to a goal.
Nice. And do you have any tips on finding KGR terms?
They're not that hard to find. I mean, I think, your KGR playlist really covers a lot of this, but my best trick is taking, STEM keywords and adding all kinds of different modifiers to them. So if we're talking about a product article, the best pens, best pens with, best pens without, best pens for, best pens, any kind of modifying phrase you can add after that, you're going to get a ton of ideas in the Google Auto Suggest and related searches. And, that's typically where I do most of my work is right in Google with keywords everywhere, giving me the volume. And I just kind of go down that rabbit hole.
I like those techniques as well. And people should check out the Keyword Golden Ratio Masterclass if they haven't yet. Give a lot of other suggestions like that. But I think you're right. It's just once you start finding some, you'll sort of develop your own technique, your style, and get a rhythm to it. And then you'll be able to find a whole lot more. So it sounds like once you sort of got into it, you didn't have any issue finding a bunch of keywords.
No, not at all. I mean, once you get the hang of it, it's not too difficult. And, you can't worry about if the volume's low. Definitely go for those 10 searches a month, 40 searches a month. Some of my best pieces of traffic wise are from keywords that said they would give me 40 searches a month or 60. I mean, right. In my experience, you'll get anywhere from 3 to 30 times that number, if you rank number one for it. So
yeah, it's crazy when you rank number one, it really changes the equation there. So one other thing that you mentioned, Evan, was you're not using the KGR as much. Maybe you'll have a look if maybe you find some area that you haven't covered much. But I guess what gave you the confidence to branch out from the KGR?
I think that I just tried it in little doses. I did a lot of KGR content, especially over the summer, and slowly I started to have some wiggle room with the volume. I'd go for 300, 500 search volume terms. I would do one here and there where it wasn't KGR, but I think the ones that encouraged me to do that were where it wasn't KGR, but I would look at the results and they all sucked. And I was well, I can go for this. It doesn't matter if it's KGR or not. I can definitely compete because there's no result for it. Right. So it was kind of learning with training wheels and then slowly taking them off as I found that I could rank for other things. And, and your site will grow more powerful as it gets older.
Yep.
There's just some things that I don't think you can rank for with a young site, but over time you can get more competitive.
Definitely. Okay, cool. And I inadvertently, I guess, not misled, but a lot of people are hey, I'm going to publish 200 posts, all KGR. I'm going to do no link building. I would never recommend that specifically. If someone made it in this, 40 minutes into our conversation, here's a good nugget. The examples that I give, the case studies are merely that, right? You could take it for that and then apply it. And I love, Evan, that you were hey, I'm going to just test 1 or 2, see what happens. And then you have a data point for your own site because everybody's site's a little bit different. different. You can go for other keywords. You don't have to publish all KGR terms. In fact, you really should go for other like higher volume terms if you want to make like more money.
Yeah.
There's more traffic. It's more competitive. At some point, you know, your site's 2 years old, 3, 4, 5 years old. Like you have some more flexibility, and you should take advantage of the age, you know, of your site and the authority and all that stuff. So cool. Is there any other advice that you would give, you know, people that are looking to, you know, recreate what you've done?
I would just encourage people to strap in for a long haul, write a lot of really good content that's helpful as you can. And yeah, I mean, KGR is fantastic. It really helped me out early on, but I think having some diversity in your content, low competition, medium competition, high competition, expecting it to take time to rank for things, like it doesn't mean the sky's falling. Like I when I write a new article, I don't expect to see anything from it for several months usually. And that's the mind frame that keeps me sane. But you'll see it just go up and up and up and up and up over the course of 6 months, 8 months, longer, you know, so it's all very slow, and that's normal. So
yep. I agree.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Patience is key. You know, if you publish it and you're thinking, hey, like why isn't it ranking number 1 yet? Like you just gotta be patient. It may take, you know, a couple months to move on. Mm-hmm. So awesome. Well, before we jet, just curious, I know your corporate life didn't sound very happy when you left. Are you happy now, like doing this kind of work? Like, what does it mean to you and your family?
Yeah, I mean, I would say more than anything, I'm just fulfilled. Like after weekends or vacations, like I'm pretty excited to get back to it. And you know, because like I dictate what I work on, and all the goals that are ahead of me are ones that I laid out, and I chose all the things that I'm going to be doing or not doing. When I was tired of writing, I was like, hey, I'm going to just work on Pinterest for a while and figure that out. And now I'm, you know, working on that, but also getting back into new content. And, you know, if I decide I want to start another site, if I decide I want to do a big push with outsourcing or whatever it is, like I dictate the terms, and that feels really good. Like to wake up on a Monday morning and be excited to get back to it. And, you know, if it's successful, then it all goes into my pocket. And if not, then, you know, I can live with that too. So.
Awesome. Very cool, Evan. Thanks for the update. I know people were super excited, so I appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Doug.
All right. Thanks a lot to Evan. Really do appreciate you taking the time. It's always good to catch up and hear what you're working on. I think this episode was kind of, you know, a little bit different because we did go into the sort of advanced topic of like business structures and taxes and that sort of thing, which is also interesting since I was just working with my accountant over the past few weeks for my 2018 taxes. So it's really not super complicated, but it's hard to find the information on what you're supposed to do unless you actually talk to an accountant or someone who's done it before. And the problem is, you know, there's consequences if you screw it up. So with a lot of other, you know, areas, you can try it out. You could test things, especially with, you know, affiliate marketing, SEO, and that sort of thing. You can test things on a small scale to see if they work and it's not an irreversible like consequence. Now, you can argue that if you structure your business improperly or you make a mistake, you can fix it, but usually it'll end up costing you money because at some point you end up hiring a professional anyway to help you do the work. Now, maybe the information's out there and I just didn't know where to find it, but a lot of times it's just easier and better to hire a pro that does this stuff all day long, and then you don't have to like waste your time researching and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is have a look at some questions and comments that I saw on this interview where it was initially posted on YouTube. So let's get into it here. And I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to pick out some interesting questions, and then I'll also point out just some comments that came through. And this one is from Lisa Hayes, and she says, "This is very motivational. Thanks, Doug and Evan. By the way, I love Pinterest. I set up Pinterest accounts for a lot of my clients. Lisa is a VA, and she has seen some fabulous results from it. She can't wait to finish out building her niche site and using Pinterest for it. Jill also mentions that it's a great interview. She loves the way you say that you're excited to get back into it after a break. I think she's referring to me. And she says, isn't that just heavenly to have that feeling about work? I can't wait until I get that feeling. Okay, so let's get into a few of the questions that popped in here. And let's see, where the heck are they? Okay, so this is WP with Tom. Tom says this: Doug and Evan, are you focused on the total number of articles in particular over the length of the articles? Not really. And obviously I'm only answering for myself, not Evan. And not really the number of articles, but I think it's a balance between the two. So for certain keywords, maybe like KGR, the keyword golden ratio type keywords, I may be interested in, just getting the content, the one piece of content out. Maybe if it's only 800 words, like it's kind of a game of volume with a KGR. So you want to publish it and then you can go back and improve it and add to it later. And I like to do that because you kind of get an idea of what's working and then you can focus on the articles that are actually getting traction. Now, the converse, and the reason why I'm saying a balance and not actually giving a straight answer here, Tom, is if you just look at the length of the article, well, I'm not going for like a certain like long length either, because if you push that idea to the extreme, which Tom, you're not suggesting that, but that's kind of an interesting way to look at what the impact can be on a particular action, if you push it to the extreme. So let's say I only wanted to publish a handful of articles and I just made them really long, say 10,000 words. Let's say I could find, information and make it interesting enough and to hit that length without, adding filler in there. The point is that may not have a good benefit overall, because let's say it's a pretty low search volume for those keywords and I made them really long and basically I could have gotten the same amount of traffic, the same impact with, say, 1/3 of the length. So that is why it's kind of a balance. And you kind of have to look at what you're trying to do. So just, back to the original question, am I focused on the total number of articles? Not really. Am I interested in the length of the articles? Yes. And that is sort of the driver. You kind of have to look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, and sort of your overall plan. So hopefully that is helpful. Grant Hanford says, 8Gs, wowza. I can relate in regards to working in the corporate world and not having fun. It's why I am working on a site and looking for some time freedom. Very good. Adrian says this. This is a pretty lengthy comment, so appreciate that, Adrian. Awesome interview. Well done. I just finished reading the 4-Hour Work Week as well, and it's mind-blowing. It's an eye-opener. I feel 100% confident that your success was accelerated because of those paramount skills you've already acquired prior to your solo online venture working for that digital agency. Yep, and I think that is key. I mean, Evan had a very strong background as a writer in copywriting, and he knew like the content world. And for a lot of us, it's brand new if you don't end up working in that anyway. So Adrian also says, I'm thinking of getting a job for an agency as well so I can learn some of those skills. Otherwise, you'll have to pay to learn them or spend months to acquire those skills. Adrian further says, one question, are you using any full-time or part-time VAs to help you out with the tasks? Obviously, I can't answer that directly for Evan, but I don't recall him mentioning VAs, but he may use them. How do you plan out your week or month? And obviously, I can't answer that either. And Adrian thanks Evan, for sharing. So I would say, I mean, I can add my 2 cents in on planning your week and month. So I go through stages where either I'm like planning pretty heavily or I'm kind of reactive. And I don't like being reactive, but kind of the way my life is working out currently, I have to roll with the punches a little bit. So I'm right off of a drive. That's a weird way to say that. Yesterday, I drove from Bozeman to Boulder, Colorado, which is about a 10-hour drive. And that was like the third time I've done it in the last several weeks. So, I mean, just it's kind of hectic right now in my life. So we're getting settled, after the move. And if if this happens to be your first episode of the show, you can, I think 1 or 2 episodes back, there's a bonus episode talking about moving to Boulder from Bozeman. So basically my wife got a job here and we relocated, and it was a whirlwind. We have executed on this very quickly, but to do that, I kind of had to put a lot of my professional stuff aside. So that consisted of me like planning ahead a whole lot, and then I'm just reactive after that. So I'm looking forward, Adrian, to sort of planning things a little bit more intentionally in the next few weeks. And in fact, it's Sunday right now when I'm recording this. I'm actually publishing it tomorrow. So I got a little bit behind on recording and stuff, but it's just been so busy, and I've had like so many other priorities ahead of time. So like I said, I want to be more intentional. And I know today being Sunday, I'm about to sit down with, a list of tasks that I need to be working on over like the next several weeks, and things that I have put aside where I'm like, okay, I can't work on it right now, but I'm going to revisit it coming up. And I kind of keep those lists going all the time. I always have a list of like, what I am interested in working on, things that I'm committed to work on, and that sort of thing. And then what I do, hopefully, if I'm doing this intentionally, is like once a week, I'll, revisit that list, make sure I'm on track from the previous week, add more things if I need to, and just kind of slot it out like what I'm going to be working on. Now, luckily, I'm going to have a little bit more time here coming up. The one other thing I didn't mention is, with all the driving to and from Bozeman to Boulder, I was also doing a lot of like household activities. We're selling our house, and that takes some time as well. So cleaning up, we had most of the stuff moved out of there, but there's still cleaning to do, packing to do. And I went up there solo. Somehow I made it a flight right after the blizzard that we had here in Colorado. So somehow I made it out, got back up there, and I spent 3 days basically working on that stuff and spending time at the airport. Anyhow, that's sort of how I try to plan my work. But at the same time, like I said, I end up being reactive a lot of the time because, I'm operating solo and there's no one telling me what to do. So there's, part of it is trying to have the vision of like what I need to be working on and where I want the business to go, as well as, keeping the other plates spinning with, say, the YouTube channel, the podcast, the blog, and just other networking and outreach that I have going on. So, all right, let's see if there's any more questions in here. So, and cleaning things mentioned this. Hey, Doug, it's me. I started my site in August, and it's the first month that the organic traffic has started rising. So cleaning things says you hit 40 searches, maybe you mean visitors, and you just wanted to give me a heads up. And sounds like, sadly, this is what cleaning things says. Sadly, my account got canceled, but I signed up again. I haven't earned anything so far in the 6 months, but hopefully soon. Okay. And not a question, but I can add some details around that. Sounds like because no sales were made, your account got canceled. And for people that aren't familiar with it, the Amazon Associate Program, you apply, basically you're accepted right away, and then the Associate Program will evaluate, review your site after you make 3 separate orders within 180 days. So if you fail to make those 3 orders, not 3 separate items, but like 3 different orders, if you fail to do that, they will close your account. It's not actually a horrible thing. All you have to do is reapply. But I would generally suggest to people to not apply until you're getting some traffic, say maybe like 10 visitors a day. And for the people that may be thinking, well, I don't want to miss out on any sales, it really doesn't matter. I mean, if you're gonna be able to make like 1 or 2 sales and you're afraid you're gonna miss them, or maybe let's say a few more than that, right? Let's say you're making a few sales, but like with that small amount of traffic, just on the off chance that you're gonna make the sales, I mean, you're not really earning much. It's like dollars, right? It's probably under $10 for a couple sales here and there, and you're better off just not stressing about it. That's kind of the idea, where it's like just focus on getting those 10, 15 visitors per day to your site. And then once you have those, you'll probably be able to make a few sales per week. Just roughly, I would say this is a very general guideline. If you can get about 100 visitors per day, you'll probably be able to make about $100 per month. Obviously, many factors involved, what niche it is, the price of the products generally in that niche. But the point is, you'll probably make like 1 sale or so one sale per 100 visitors a day, which roughly you're probably going to end up at about $100 per month. So if you back that down, right, if you scale that back a little bit, if you're getting 10 visitors per day, every 10 days, that's about 100 visitors, and you'll probably be able to make a few sales if you're getting about 10, 15 visitors per day. So I would wait to apply until you have a few visitors on your site. Don't worry about missing out on 1 or 2 sales here or there. That's just a drop in the bucket. And, in the long run, it's not really going to account for anything. Okay. Charlie Parker says this is on Pinterest. So my site only has 43 posts, and I get about 100 to 200 visitors per day from Pinterest. So that's pretty awesome, Charlie. I haven't had any strategy at all, really. I haven't even used any descriptions or hashtags at all for any of my pins, and I don't pin every day. All I do is every time I make a blog post, I make a Pinterest-specific graphic, long and thin, sort of a vertical orientation. Thin is kind of a funny word to use there, but a vertical orientation like portrait mode, So yeah, you make a Pinterest-specific graphic for that post and you pin it. Then I pin a few other images from that blog post, and that's all I do. I rarely, if ever, pin other people's content, and I only make a few pins around twice per month. My account has about 1,000 followers and gets about 600,000 exposures per month. The majority of the people on Pinterest are creative and, quote, project-minded, so create your Pinterest-specific images with that in mind. So pretty cool. Charlie, that's really awesome. And a few people asked you questions. So Luke says, do you only pin your own boards and not onto other group boards? And how'd you get 1,000 followers? So Charlie says, I only pin my own boards and I only pin my own pins. I don't know how I got the followers, just from people finding the pins somehow and deciding to follow your boards. That's pretty cool overall. And Gulad says, how does the traffic convert to sales? What's the conversion rate? So I think that'd be pretty tough to track all the way. And it's important to define the conversion rate that you're talking about. Do you Do you count clicking to Amazon a conversion? Do you count visiting the website as a conversion? Do you have to make the sale for it to actually be a conversion? So it's kind of unclear exactly what you mean there, Gulad. But either way, it's hard to impossible to track. And Charlie says, I don't have specific tracking info for that, but my suspicion is that it doesn't. But engagement is a ranking factor, and I have noticed that if a pin gets a lot of traction on Pinterest, the blog post tends to rank well. And I have seen that sort of correlation as well. I don't have a lot of experience with Pinterest, but in the past, I've accidentally had some posts do really well on Pinterest, and correspondingly, the rankings did really well. Now, the problem with that correlation is there are other factors involved, right? There's like a lot of other factors involved, over 200, I would say, from the Google ranking perspective. So the reason why I'm unsure how much of a factor it played is because I was also doing a great deal of link building to that post that had the great pin that was getting so much engagement on Pinterest. So they kind of go hand in hand. I don't know like what happened. I didn't try to make anything special happen on the Pinterest side. It just happened to be a good post, and there happened to be a good graphic that people liked on Pinterest. It was a vertical, a long sort of graphic, long and thin, as Charlie says. So, the other thing I'll mention is I am working on Pinterest right now. So after talking to a few people in the course of, I don't know, it was like a week back in January, I talked to Marty, I talked to Duke, I talked to Evan, and a couple other people off the record as well, who were working on Pinterest. And I was like, you know what? I've been dragging my feet on this for so long. Everyone mentioned Tailwind. I checked out sort of the capabilities and stuff. And then I am working with my VA, who actually does like a great job on Pinterest herself. And, she's basically an expert. She's been, deep in the weeds on Pinterest for the last couple of years. So I am having her help me out with Pinterest. So we'll see how it goes. Right now, I'm not getting a huge amount of additional traffic from Pinterest, but it's only been about 5 to 6 weeks or so, maybe. Yeah, about that. My whole life is sort of making me confused about what day it is, what month, and how much time has passed. I have no clue what's going on, to be honest with you, because of this whirlwind of a move. But basically, traffic is going up a little bit from Pinterest, but it's still, a drop in the bucket. It's like a drop in the ocean. It's very little traffic. However, it's roughly doubled over the past few weeks. And as far as engagement and stuff goes, it's tremendous. It's up, hundreds of percent on the Pinterest side. And again, it's important to note, like, you can get a lot of engagement and action on Pinterest, a lot of, like impressions, but the real ROI is going to come with like additional traffic to your site when you're, looking at the conversion rate. Now, that said, maybe there's some secondary effects where the rankings are going to move up if you get that engagement on Pinterest. But I have a feeling, this is unsubstantiated, just me talking without any research or being informed, but my hunch is getting the actual traffic from Pinterest is better than just getting the, engagement on Pinterest, if that makes sense. And full disclosure, as I was working with my VA, just asking questions about Pinterest and like what she was going to do, I asked I want to learn, right? I want to be able to present this information later. So as we're going, I'm asking like the dumbest questions in the world. In fact, one of the one of the silliest things, which I didn't realize, I thought that you had to put the image, if you want to create a pin, I thought you had to put the image on the web page, right? I thought you had to pin it from there, but it turns out, because Pinterest is its own ecosystem there, you can, create the image, the graphic, and then put it just straight on Pinterest, and it can link to your URL. It can link to the post that you want it to go to with its own individual description, which is sort of similar to the meta description from an SEO standpoint. And basically, I didn't know that you could just put an image on Pinterest that didn't have to be on your actual web page. So at that point, I realized how uninformed I really am about Pinterest. All right, that's going to do it for today. And thanks a lot for tuning in. Again, thanks to Evan. Thanks for listening, kind listener. And if you have a moment, it would help me out a bunch if you left a review on iTunes or whatever you listen to your podcast on, and tell people about it. It helps spread the word, and I really do appreciate it. So have a great day, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.